Hello, fellow educators, and welcome to our lesson on teaching strategies in inclusive classrooms for higher education. To begin, let us reflect on the African philosophy of Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. This powerful concept reminds us of our interconnectedness as human beings and the importance of nurturing our differences across cultures, languages, abilities, and learning styles. In this video, you will learn the following.
What is inclusive education? Why is it important? Forms of diversity in Namibian classroom contexts, strategies to create inclusive classrooms, and the best practices for online teaching and learning.
Now, some of you might be wondering, what is inclusive education in higher education? Well, inclusive education goes beyond just acknowledging diversity. It is about actively removing barriers and creating an environment where every student feels empowered, valued, respected, and motivated to reach their full potential regardless of their background or abilities. And in higher education, it also involves creating a curricula and teaching methods that are engaging and accessible to every student. Furthermore, inclusive education is essential for promoting equitable access and success for all learners in higher education. It's not just a moral imperative, but crucial for academic and social success. Studies also show that students from underrepresented minorities face significant obstacles such as higher dropout rates, lower academic achievement, and long lasting impacts on their future prospects when inclusivity is lacking. However, when we embrace differences and create a sense of community, then institutions can unlock immense potential amongst their diverse student population. Furthermore, diverse teaching is very important because it exposes students to stimulating discussions, varied opinions, and even context that is related to their own lived experiences. Before we move even further, let's take Namibia as a practical example because I feel as Namibians we can relate to this. So let's start by understanding the diversity present in our own Namibian classrooms. Now, diversity actually comes in many forms such as cultural, linguistic, socio-economic, and learning styles. I want you to reflect on your own educational journey so far. Was there ever a moment where you felt unwelcomed? Or perhaps faced barriers that did not allow you to fully participate to achieve your educational goals? Or perhaps you received content that did not align with your own cultural background? Or even faced learning differences where you felt your learning style was unaccommodated? Maybe you felt discrimination or microaggression that made you feel unwelcome. With that said, let's take a moment and test your understanding on inclusivity in education with a quick quiz. Students, for this quiz, you will have 10 seconds to select the right answer. Question: when Jerry and Sarah walked into their first day of classes, they were immediately met with a sinking feeling of isolation. As a first-generation college student from a low-income household, they struggled to relate to the affluent backgrounds of their peers. What underlying aspect of diversity contributed to this student's sense of isolation? Was it A, cultural background, or B, socio-economic status, C, physical ability, or D, learning style? The correct answer is B. This example highlights how systematic barriers related to a student's economic background can impact their sense of belonging and ability to engage in the learning environment. We are now going to look at strategies that you as an educator can implement to create inclusive learning environments in higher education. Number one, use inclusive language and incorporate diverse voices in the curriculum or materials.
To do this, ensure all students see themselves represented in the content and discussions. Use gender neutral language and include works from scholars of diverse backgrounds.
Provide content, warnings, and flexibility on how students demonstrate learning.
To achieve this, offer students choices in how they can complete assignments, provide warnings about sensitive content to prepare and support students.
Implement universal design for learning principles.
Provide materials accessible to all students by providing content in multiple formats. Allow various ways for students to engage with the content and demonstrate their knowledge.
Continuously self-reflect on biases, seek training, and gather student feedback. Last but not least, we are going to be looking at the best practices for online teaching and learning. As some of you may or may not know, with the rise of online and blended learning, inclusive education in higher education has taken on new dimensions. So, here are some key practices that you can implement as an educator to ensure that both online teaching and learning are inclusive. First and foremost, it's very important to implement a universal design for learning in online courses.
UDL is applicable to both classrooms and online courses, as it allows instructors to provide materials in varied formats, such as text, audio, or video. You can also allow multiple means of engagement and knowledge expression.
2. Culturally responsive online teaching.
This includes incorporating diverse cultural perspectives through multimedia, inviting guest speakers from varied backgrounds.
Number 3. Ensure digital accessibility.
To achieve this, use captions, text alternatives, and compatible platforms. Follow accessibility guidelines for online content.
4. Incorporate peer learning and collaboration.
Do this by leveraging on group chats, discussion boards, and shared documents. Facilitate peer teaching and peer feedback opportunities.
And 5. Make sure that you incorporate reflective teaching.
In reflective teaching, you can collect feedback from students about the online learning experience, make adjustments based on student input.
To recap, we've discussed the importance of inclusive education and explored various strategies to create inclusive learning environments in higher education. We've also looked at the strategies which educators can implement to ensure that their classrooms are inclusive and the best practices to implement in online teaching and learning. Furthermore, as educators and learners, we have the power to make a positive impact in our diverse student populations. Speak up about barriers that you might face or witness around you. And remember that sometimes to identify whether a student is excluded, you might want to ask simple questions like who tends to speak up, who is often silent and withdrawn, who seems engaged or disconnected, and are there patterns in participation related to race, gender, or socioeconomic status? And are there students who consistently face barriers with accessing learning materials and participating fully? These are some of the simple questions you can ask yourself to identify whether a particular student might be excluded from your classroom learning activities or learning materials. Dear educators, by being mindful of these questions, we can take proactive steps to ensure that every student feels heard, seen, respected, and valued. By so doing, together we can build a learning environment where every student is empowered, where our differences are celebrated as assets and not obstacles. Before we end today's lesson, I have a small task for you. The pie chart below illustrates the summary of the strategies and best practices that you have learned today. I want you to reflect on how you can implement one of these strategies in your own teaching. And please share your thoughts in the comments. And this brings us to the end of lesson 1. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and if you have any other questions, do reach out to me, and I wish you a pleasant day ahead.